Today we're going to prepare the study guide for Algebra 1A, lessons 1-1 through 1-4. Hopefully you have all of those assignments submitted and you have your questions asked and you've asked for regrading if you need that. So let's look at some sample problems that will be reflective of what you're going to see on the test. Starting with number 1. We are going to write a verbal expression. In other words, you need to write words for what you see with numbers, variables, and symbols. You're probably going to want to write your directions down so you know what to look for when you have the test. So when looking at letter A, we have multiplication right here. We have addition here. I would suggest you stop the video before each problem and see if you can work it out yourself and then come back and see how you did. For this problem, one example of a correct answer would be 3 times C plus 9. Now I would like for you to try example 1B. Here is one possible answer. 5 times n cubed plus 2. Now we are ready for number 2. This also has a part A and part B. The directions for this one is to write an algebraic expression. So we have verbal expression, which was words, and now we need to create an algebraic expression that has numbers, variables, and symbols. Go ahead and write down letter A and see what you can come up with. A number n plus the product of 6 and p. So when I look at this, I'm going to try to pick out the operation words. Plus and product, which means addition and multiplication. So we're talking about a number n. Here we're going to use the variable, use the symbol, the plus sign. And how are we going to show the product of 6 and p? When you show multiplication between a number and a variable, if you just put them side by side, it's understood that multiplication is going on in between the coefficient and the variable. Now I'd like for you to try letter B. The sum of 3 and a number n times 8. Let's pick out our operation words. Sum means addition, times means multiplication. So if we're talking about the sum of 3 and a number, n, that's 3 plus n. And since we're talking about this sum, the whole sum is multiplied by 8. Now let's look at 3. This has 2 parts as well. Go ahead and write down your directions and these problems. On A, I would like for you to try to work this out. Now that you've had a chance to work it out, let's look at the order of operations. We have subtraction and we have multiplication, but the subtraction is inside parentheses. Order of operations says we need to do parentheses first. 15 minus 2 is 13, so you should have 13 times 5, which simplifies to 65. Go ahead and try letter B using the order of operations. Now let's look at what we have. We have a power, we have division, addition, subtraction, addition, and a power. No parentheses, but let's start with our powers. And since they are at opposite ends of our expression and they're separated by all kinds of symbols, we can do these in the same line. 3 squared is 9. 5 squared is 25. I'm going to bring down the rest of my expression. Now we have division, addition, subtraction, and addition. What should be done first according to the order of operations? Division. 3 plus 2 minus 1 plus 25. Now we have addition, subtraction, and addition. These can be done in the same step from left to right. So 3 plus 2 is 5. 5 minus 1 is 4. And 4 plus 25 is 29. Do you see how I combined some of the simple ones first and wrote it down and then added? Now let's look at number 4. We're going to evaluate if x equals 4, y equals 5, and z equals 6. Go ahead and write this down, copy your 2 problems down, and then substitute and evaluate. So let's begin with letter A. Remember, when you substitute, it's a good idea to put your value in parentheses. So we have 4 squared plus 5 minus 6. Order of operations says to do power first. So we have 16 plus 5 minus 6. 16 plus 5 is 21. And 21 minus 6 is 15. Now let's do letter B. When you substitute, x becomes 4. And I'm going to make this brackets so we don't get confused with all of the parentheses. 2, and substitute 5 for y, and 6 for z. Now I'm going to work inside my grouping symbols. We have multiplication and addition. Multiplication can be done first, and both of them can be done at the same time because they're being separated by an addition sign. So we have 10 plus 30 inside of our grouping symbols. Bring down your 4. 10 plus 30 is 40. 40 times 4 is 160. Now let's look at number 5. There are 3 parts to this problem. We'll do one at a time. The directions for all 3 of these would be to write the missing property. So let's focus on letter A. 5 squared plus 3 multiplied by 1/3 minus 4. Order of operations says to simplify your power first. So that's 25 plus 3 times 1/3 minus 4. Since we changed 5 squared to 25, that is substitution. Now, I would like for you to compare that with our last step. What they've done is they've multiplied 3 times 1/3 and they've replaced it with 1. I want you to think about what property that would be. Pause and then come back. If you look at your properties page, you can see that 2 numbers being multiplied together is going to be a multiplicative property. And if you look at your multiplicative properties on your page, you will see that this is a multiplicative inverse. Inverse means reciprocal. 3 is really 3 over 1, and the reciprocal of 3 over 1 is 1/3. Multiply those together and you get 1. Now let's look at part B. Go ahead and write it down. And then I want you to think about what was done between first step and second step. We are adding between each of these terms. Since it's all addition, it has to be some kind of property of addition. Which property says we can change the order so that we can make groups of 10 or whole numbers? See how we've got groups here? Changing the order is called commutative. And I'm going to put a capital C here like I did in the notes. Commutative property of, and what's going on between these? Addition. COA, or if you want to write commutative property of addition, you can. Now let's look at C. Go ahead and write it down. The very first step has the numbers written, all addition. Then the second step shows how we're going to group them together to make a multiple of 10, like 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, etc. So if you add 23 and 17 together, you would get 50. And if you added 14 and 36 together, you would get 50. So we're just showing this grouping here. So what property of addition shows the grouping symbols? This is called the associative property of addition, using the grouping symbols. And lastly, for your study guide, let's look at number 6. We have 4 parts that we are going to work on. This is from lesson 1-4. We are going to simplify completely these 4 problems. So let's look at letter A. Go ahead and write it down and see what you can do. Let's look at parentheses. 13 and 9a are not like terms, so they cannot be added together. Since nothing can be done inside the parentheses, we need to multiply first. And lesson 1-4 was about distribution. What this is doing is showing 4 times 13. It's like sharing. Bring down your plus sign, and 4 gets shared with 9a. Multiplication here would be 52. And multiplication here would be 36a. And if you look at them again, this has the labeling of a, this does not. So it is simplified completely. You cannot add these 2 together. They are not like terms. Now I would like for you to try letter B. Again, A and B are not like terms. You cannot add them together. So let's distribute. And when you distribute the 3 times the A, put your plus sign down, distribute the 3, and it's times B. Go ahead and try letter C, simplify. All of these have the same labeling. If there's not a coefficient or a number in front of the W, we assume it to be 1. Since they are like terms, we can add and subtract the coefficients. 1 plus 9 is 10. 10 minus 5 is 5. And don't forget, these all belonged with the labeling W. Try letter D. First, let's look inside of parentheses. Do we have any like terms that we can combine? And I believe we do. I see a negative 5R and a positive 3R. So a negative 5 plus 3 is a negative 2, and keep your labeling R. Bring down the rest of your problem. These two cannot be combined. They are not like terms. There's a Q and there's an R. So the parentheses are simplified, but the entire problem is not. You need to go ahead and distribute that 5 to each term inside the parentheses. So what that looks like is 5 times Q, bring down your minus sign, 5 times 2R. This right here, you don't necessarily have to show as long as you can think of this in your mind. And when you go ahead and simplify this, 5 times 2 is 10. Keep the labeling of Q. Bring down your subtraction sign, and 5 times 2 is 10. And here, keep your labeling of R. Can these two be combined? They cannot. They are not like terms. This has a labeling of Q, and this has a labeling of R. That is all for this study guide. You need to make sure that all of your lessons 1-1 through 1-4 are completed. You also need to make sure that all of your notes 1-1 through 1-4 are completely filled out. Tomorrow, before your test, you're going to be turning in your notes along with your study guide to get extra credit on your test. So make sure you have those done, ready to hand in before the test.